The Endeavour buzzed with anticipation as crew members scurried about, preparing for an event unlike any other in human history. The first official visit from the Zenthari Empire. Captain Maya Reynolds stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the viewport as the sleek, iridescent Zenthari ship descended through the atmosphere, a marvel of engineering and artistry. It shimmered in hues of blue and green, a stark contrast to the rugged military aesthetic of the Endeavour. Status report. Reynolds barked, her tone a blend of authority and excitement. The crew members straightened at their stations, ready to ensure everything went flawlessly. Approaching docking bay, Captain. All systems green, reported Lieutenant Sam Carter, her first officer. Yet, despite the smooth operations, there was an underlying tension in the air, a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As the docking bay doors opened, the Zenthari delegation emerged, led by none other than Princess Alara herself. She stepped onto the ship with a confidence that seemed to radiate through the chamber, her emerald skin glinting under the artificial lights. Her long flowing hair resembled strands of silver thread, and her eyes, deep violet and wise, surveyed the humans before her. In that moment, every person in the room felt an inexplicable pull towards her, a magnetic aura that hinted at her royal status. "Welcome, Princess Alara," Captain Reynolds said, extending a hand. Alara grasped it firmly, a sly smile playing on her lips. "Captain Reynolds, it is an honor," she replied, her voice melodic yet commanding. "I look forward to learning about your people." As the formalities began, tension crackled like static in the air. The two sides exchanged pleasantries, but underneath the surface, an unspoken conflict simmered. The humans were eager to showcase their achievements, while Alara seemed more interested in delving into the core of human experience, something the ambassadors had not anticipated. "Tell me," Alara began, leaning forward in her seat during the initial briefing. "What is it that makes humans human?" The question hung in the air, and the human representatives exchanged puzzled glances. They were accustomed to discussions about trade, technology, and military alliances, not introspective queries. Captain Reynolds cleared her throat. Well, we value resilience, creativity, and community," she said, unsure of how to address such an abstract question. Alara raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement dancing in her eyes. "And how do you experience those values? I wish to see it firsthand, not just in words." Her insistence caught the delegation off guard. They exchanged furtive looks, the unspoken question lingering. How could a princess of an advanced empire seek to experience life on a human ship? "I propose," Alara continued, her gaze unwavering, "that I travel aboard your ship rather than in the luxury of my own. I want to immerse myself in your culture, your daily lives." The room fell silent. The human ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Captain Reynolds felt the weight of Alara's request pressing down on her like a leaden cloak. She was determined to show the best of humanity, but this felt like stepping into uncharted territory. "Princess Alara, that is unconventional," Reynolds finally replied, her voice steady but laced with concern. "Conventional is not what I seek," Alara stated firmly, a spark of rebellion in her eyes. "I refuse all alternatives. I want to learn from you, truly learn." The tension in the room escalated, a storm brewing between the two cultures. Would they embrace this opportunity to bridge their worlds, or would Alara's boldness send them spiraling into chaos? Captain Reynolds knew one thing. The course ahead would be anything but predictable. The initial silence in the room morphed into a low murmur as the human delegation processed Princess Alara's audacious proposal. Captain Reynolds leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had anticipated many things from this diplomatic visit, but a request so brazen had not been on her radar. "Princess, our ship is equipped for military operations. It's not a cultural experience center," Lieutenant Carter interjected, his brow furrowed. "You might find it lacking compared to your royal accommodations." Alara's violet eyes sparkled with mischief. That is precisely the point, Lieutenant. I want to experience life as it truly is for your people, not just the polished version presented in the grand halls of diplomacy. Reynolds watched the interplay, intrigued. Elara was not merely a princess. She was a force of nature. Despite her reservations, the captain felt a flicker of excitement at the prospect of such an unorthodox alliance. The galaxy was vast and often hostile. Perhaps the best way forward was to embrace this unexpected twist. "Very well," Reynolds finally said, her voice steady. "If you wish to board the Endeavor *, we will welcome you. But I must ask you to respect our protocols and the nature of our mission." Elara's face broke into a radiant smile, one that momentarily softened her commanding demeanor. "I promise to be on my best behavior, Captain. You will not regret this decision." As the meeting adjourned, the atmosphere lightened, though skepticism lingered in the air. Crew members whispered among themselves, some excited, others apprehensive. Elara's presence promised to shake things up, and not everyone was ready for that. Aboard the Endeavor. The following day, Elara boarded the Endeavor, her Zenthari guards keeping a respectful distance. She strode confidently down the corridor, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling ship. The crew cast curious glances her way, unsure how to react to their unexpected guest. "Welcome aboard, Princess," one crew member said, his voice hesitant. Elara smiled, her warm demeanor immediately putting him at ease. "Please, call me Elara. I would love to learn everyone's names," she replied, her enthusiasm infectious. As she interacted with the crew, Elara asked about their lives, their duties, and their dreams, her genuine interest breaking down barriers. Yet as the day progressed, the ship's routine began to shift. Elara joined in on morning exercises, her agility and speed catching everyone off guard. She effortlessly outpaced seasoned soldiers, and laughter echoed in the halls as crew members tried to keep up. However, not all encounters were lighthearted. During a briefing about an upcoming training exercise, Elara's curiosity took a more serious turn. "Tell me, how do you prepare for conflict?" she asked, her tone earnest. The room went silent, the weight of her question settling heavily on everyone. Reynolds looked at her, measuring her words carefully. "We train to protect our home and our allies. Combat is not just about victory. It's about making sure we're not the aggressors." Elara nodded, her expression contemplative. "In my empire, we train to protect as well, but we also strive to understand our enemies. Knowing their motivations helps us find common ground." Lieutenant Carter scoffed, clearly unconvinced. "Common ground? We're not just talking about rivalries, we're talking about survival. You can't negotiate with a foe who wishes to annihilate you, can't you?" Elara shot back, her voice firm yet measured. "What if we could change the course of our histories? What if understanding could forge a path to peace?" Reynolds sensed a spark of tension in the air. The dialogue had shifted, becoming less about cultural exchange and more about ideology. Elara was challenging not just the crew's assumptions, but the very foundations of their military mindset. As the meeting adjourned, the crew left with more questions than answers, the seeds of doubt sown in their minds. In the quiet of her quarters, Reynolds reflected on the day's events. Elara was unlike anyone she had ever encountered, provocative, passionate, and relentless in her pursuit of knowledge. Perhaps this alliance would be more transformative than she had ever imagined. But could they truly bridge the chasm between their worlds? The challenge was only just beginning. With each passing day, Elara's presence aboard the Endeavor transformed the ship into a vibrant hub of activity. Her enthusiasm for human life was infectious, and the crew gradually warmed to her unconventional charm. But as they adjusted to her presence, Elara's keen observations began to reveal the heart of the ship and its crew. One afternoon, Elara strolled through the galley, where crew members gathered for lunch. The aromas of Earth's diverse cuisine wafted through the air, and she watched as they shared stories and laughter. Intrigued, she decided to join them, her bright eyes sparkling with curiosity. "What are you eating?" she asked, leaning over a plate of something that resembled a colorful stir-fry. "Just some vegetables and tofu," replied Ensign Martinez, smiling shyly. "It's a favorite among the crew. Keeps us healthy for our missions." "Healthy," Alara repeated, tilting her head. "How does food keep you healthy?" As the crew explained the concept of nutrition, Alara listened intently, her mind racing. "In my culture, we believe in balance as well, but our meals are often prepared with rituals, each ingredient symbolizing a part of our world." Curiosity piqued, she asked, "Can I cook something for you? A meal that represents my culture?" The crew erupted in laughter, some eager and others skeptical. "Good luck," Carter teased, arms crossed. "Our chef has high standards." Undeterred, Alara set to work. The galley buzzed with excitement as crew members gathered, amused at the prospect of their royal guest attempting to recreate a Zenthari dish. They handed her ingredients, guiding her through the process, but chaos ensued as she clumsily navigated the unfamiliar tools. Alara grinned, her laughter echoing through the galley. "This is a wonderful experience," she exclaimed, flour flying as she attempted to mix spices. "I never imagined I would find such joy in the kitchen." Hours later, the dish, a vibrant medley of fruits, grains, and exotic spices, was finally ready. The crew, half incredulous and half eager, gathered around the table, anticipation swirling in the air. Alara beamed with pride as she presented her creation. With the first bites, silence enveloped the room. Then, one by one, smiles broke out, followed by a chorus of praise. "This is amazing," Ensign Martinez exclaimed. "I've never tasted anything like it." Alara's eyes shone with delight. "I'm glad you enjoy it. Food is a bridge between cultures, a way to share who we are." As laughter filled the galley, Alara took a moment to reflect. The human experience was not just about their technological prowess, but also their ability to connect on a personal level. She felt her own perceptions shifting, realizing that these simple interactions were the foundation of understanding. Navigating tension. Yet not all moments were lighthearted. During a routine training exercise, Alara's curiosity led her to the ship's simulation room, where crew members practiced combat scenarios. She watched intently, her brow furrowing as she observed their techniques. "What are you doing?" she asked abruptly, her tone laced with concern. "This is not how you approach a conflict." Carter, frustrated, stepped forward. "And how would you approach it, Princess? With a song and a dance." Alara met his gaze, her expression serious. "You underestimate the power of strategy and understanding. You cannot fight effectively if you do not know your enemy's motivations. There is always more to a conflict than brute force." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Alara's words hung in the air like a challenge, igniting a spark of curiosity and frustration. Reynolds watched as Carter wrestled with his own misconceptions, torn between loyalty to his training and the provocative ideas Alara presented. "Let me show you," Alara suggested, her voice calm yet assertive. "Let's design a simulation where we explore the motivations of our opponents instead of simply defeating them." Reynolds nodded, intrigued. "All right, let's give it a try. We need to expand our approach." As they set up the new simulation, the crew felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Alara's challenge to their established norms was unsettling, but the potential for growth was undeniable. Perhaps there was wisdom to be found in her perspective, a path to understanding that transcended traditional military training. As the simulation began, Alara guided the crew through scenarios that forced them to confront not just their enemy's tactics, but their underlying motivations and fears. The experience was enlightening, and the crew began to see the potential for empathy, even in the face of conflict. By the end of the session, weary yet invigorated, the crew shared a newfound respect for Alara and her insights. In her quest to understand humanity, she was teaching them that true strength lay not only in combat readiness, but in the capacity for understanding, a lesson that resonated deeply within each of them. As the days turned into weeks aboard the Endeavour, the camaraderie between Alara and the crew deepened, but so too did the friction. Her boldness and unorthodox methods began to rattle some members of the crew, especially Lieutenant Sam Carter. The first officer had initially approached Alara with skepticism, and his irritation was only growing. One afternoon, during a routine strategy meeting, Alara proposed an innovative approach to their upcoming training exercise, a scenario involving diplomatic negotiation with a fictional alien race. While many crew members were intrigued, Carter crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "Princess, we're a military ship," he said, his voice steady but edged with frustration. "Our purpose is to defend, not to negotiate with enemies." "You're missing the point." Alara met his gaze, unflinching. "Lieutenant, if we cannot understand our enemies, how can we effectively protect ourselves? Every foe has a reason for their actions. If we only fight, we will never know how to prevent the fight in the first place. Or we might lose everything by trying to talk." Carter shot back, his voice rising. The tension in the room escalated as crew members shifted uneasily in their seats, glancing between Alara and Carter. "Enough," Reynolds interjected, her voice firm. "We're here to learn from each other. Alara's perspective may offer us insights we've overlooked." The room fell silent, but the air was thick with unresolved tension. Carter's jaw tightened, but he nodded, albeit begrudgingly. "Fine. Let's try her approach, but I won't be responsible for any misguided idealism leading to disaster." The training exercise. The training exercise was set for the following day, and the crew prepared with a mixture of excitement and dread. Alara and Reynolds collaborated on the scenarios, carefully crafting a situation where the crew had to negotiate with a hostile alien faction known for its brutal tactics. As the simulation commenced, the crew gathered in the holographic simulation room. Alara stood beside Reynolds, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. The holographic aliens materialized, fierce and imposing, their voices booming with authority. "Negotiate with them, not fight them," Alara urged the crew, her voice steady and confident. "Find out what they truly want." The initial approach felt tense. Carter, assigned to lead the negotiation, walked in front of the holographic aliens, his stance rigid and defensive. Alara observed closely, her heart racing with concern. As the dialogue began, Carter relied on aggression, demanding compliance and showing no willingness to understand their motives. "Lieutenant, remember what we discussed," Alara called out, her voice echoing in the simulation chamber. "You need to show them respect." The aliens responded with hostility, and the scenario quickly spiraled into chaos. The crew became embroiled in a shouting match, and the simulation abruptly shut down, leaving everyone reeling. "That went well," Carter muttered under his breath, frustration boiling over. "We were set up to fail." Alara stepped forward, her expression serious. "No, Sam. We weren't set up to fail. We were set up to learn. You approached them with aggression. We need to find a way to connect, even if it's difficult." Carter's eyes narrowed. "And what if connecting gets us killed?" "You're too idealistic for this reality, Princess. This is a military operation, not a diplomatic tea party." Reynolds intervened, sensing the escalating conflict. "Both of you have valid points. We need to find a balance. Alara, your approach has merit, but Carter's concerns about our safety are also crucial. Let's debrief and analyze what went wrong." As the crew engaged in a heated discussion, Alara and Carter exchanged glances, a silent battle of wills brewing between them. The crew's mixed feelings about Alara's methods were palpable, but so was the growing admiration for her insight. After the meeting, Alara approached Carter in the corridor, her expression softening. "I understand your concerns, Sam." "I do. But we cannot allow fear to dictate our choices. If we want to survive in this universe, we must be willing to explore alternatives." Carter hesitated, the tension in his posture easing slightly. "I get that, Alara. But it's hard to shift my mindset when it feels like everything we've been trained for is being questioned. Alara smiled gently. I admire your dedication. Perhaps that's why we're both here, to challenge each other and grow. If we can find common ground, we'll be stronger for it. As they stood in the dimly lit corridor, an unspoken understanding began to bridge the gap between them. Though the sparks of friction remained, the potential for collaboration was undeniable, setting the stage for future challenges and revelations. The journey was far from over, and the tension between tradition and innovation would continue to shape their paths. The atmosphere aboard the Endeavour was electric in the days following the training exercise. A newfound camaraderie between Alara and the crew blossomed amid a mix of skepticism and respect. However, as they navigated the complexities of their partnership, a distant shadow loomed, a threat that none could foresee. One evening, as the stars twinkled outside the viewport, a routine system check revealed an anomaly. Lieutenant Carter, deep in his data analysis, frowned at his monitor. "Captain, we have a problem," he called out, his voice tense. Reynolds approached, glancing over his shoulder. "What do you see?" "There's a distortion in the energy signatures just beyond the asteroid belt. It looks like several ships are approaching, and they're not broadcasting any identification." Alara, who had been studying human navigation systems with keen interest, leaned in, her eyes narrowing. Could they be hostile? Reynolds and Carter exchanged worried glances. "We can't be sure, but we need to prepare for any possibility," Reynolds said. "Alert the crew and set our defensive protocols." Within moments, the ship was alive with activity. Alarms blared as crew members moved with purpose, readying the ship for potential confrontation. Alara stood at the command center, her heart pounding. The very chaos she had sought to understand was now unfolding around her. "Captain, I suggest we send out a warning signal," Alara proposed, her voice steady despite the tension. "If they are hostile, we need to gauge their intentions." Reynolds nodded, impressed by Alara's proactive approach. "Sam, send out a broadcast. We'll give them a chance to respond." As Carter sent the signal, the crew anxiously monitored the approaching ships. The view screen displayed ominous silhouettes against the backdrop of stars, and Alara felt the weight of the moment. The Zenthari had never faced human combat tactics, but she had learned enough to appreciate the gravity of the situation. Minutes felt like hours as the incoming vessels closed in, and suddenly, their intentions became clear. Without warning, the lead ship opened fire, energy blasts lighting up the dark void of space. The Endeavour shuddered as the shields absorbed the impact, and alarms blared more frantically. "Battle stations," Reynolds commanded, her voice slicing through the chaos. "All hands to combat positions." Carter took his place at the tactical console, eyes sharp as he began to analyze the enemy's movements. "They're organized," he said, his tone serious. "We need to counter their attacks, but their firepower is formidable." Alara felt a rush of adrenaline. "What if we attempt to maneuver around them? Use the asteroids for cover," she suggested, recalling strategies from her own training. "If we can position ourselves advantageously, we might force them to rethink their approach." "Not a bad idea," Reynolds said, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Carter, plot a course. We'll use the asteroid field to our advantage." The crew sprang into action, executing the captain's orders. The Endeavour swerved sharply, darting into the asteroid belt. Alara felt a surge of exhilaration as the ship weaved between the massive rock formations, the enemy vessels hot on their tail. The disorientation of the asteroid field created confusion, making it difficult for the attackers to maintain their lock. "Steady," Carter called out, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to keep our shields up and avoid collisions." Alara's heart raced as she focused on the screen, ready to shop directions. "Engage evasive maneuvers, if we can flank them." Suddenly, a piercing alarm interrupted her thoughts. "They've locked onto us," one crew member shouted, panic creeping into their voice. "Incoming fire." "Brace for impact," Reynolds yelled, her voice commanding. The ship rocked violently as another energy blast struck, sending shockwaves through the hull. Alara gritted her teeth, her mind racing. We can't just run. We need to fight back. Target their engines to disable them. The crew responded, refocusing their fire on the approaching ships. Alara took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She could feel the pressure mounting, but she also felt a sense of purpose. As the Endeavor fired back, the enemy's formation began to break. The initial shock of the attack was transforming into a fierce resolve, and Alara could see the crew working in harmony, driven by the shared goal of survival. They were no longer just a military vessel and a visiting princess. They were a unified force ready to face a common threat. Keep pushing. We're not done yet. Reynolds urged, her voice filled with grit. We can turn this around. In the depths of battle, Alara found herself invigorated by the crew's determination. They were navigating the chaos together, proving that even in the face of danger, understanding and cooperation could illuminate a path to victory. The conflict had ignited something within her, a fierce commitment to protect this crew and the ideals they had begun to forge together. The battle raged on, but as long as they stood together, Alara felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome remained uncertain, but they would fight for their shared future. As the Endeavor navigated the treacherous asteroid field, the crew worked in unison, adrenaline fueling their every action. The enemy ships, now scattered and disoriented, struggled to maintain their formation, but they were far from defeated. Alara, perched at the command station, watched with a mix of fear and determination. Captain, their engines are still operational, Carter shouted, frustration evident in his voice. If we don't disable them quickly, they'll regroup and strike back harder. Reynolds, focused and resolute, nodded. Then let's give them a taste of their own medicine. Alara, I need your insight. How would your people handle a tactical retreat? Alara considered the question, her mind racing. In Zenthari tactics, we often use decoys, feints to mislead our opponents. If we can create a diversion, we can draw them away and disable their ships one by one. Let's do it, Reynolds said, her voice firm. Carter, prepare the launch bay. We'll deploy some drones equipped with energy emitters to simulate an attack on the other side of the field. On it, Carter replied, tapping commands into his console. As the drones were prepped for launch, Alara felt a wave of anticipation. This was more than just a battle. It was a chance to test the collaborative spirit they had cultivated aboard the Endeavor. Drones are ready, Carter announced. Launching now. The small, agile ships zipped out of the bay, weaving skillfully through the asteroids before repositioning on the opposite side of the enemy vessels. Alara watched intently, her heart racing as the drones activated their emitters, creating the illusion of an attack. Look, they're taking the bait, one crew member shouted, pointing at the view screen. The enemy ships began to turn, their weapons primed and focused on the drones. Now's our chance, Reynolds commanded. Let's flank them while they're distracted. With a swift maneuver, the Endeavor darted toward the nearest enemy ship, weapons primed. The crew engaged, and the energy blasts erupted from the ship's cannons, striking true. Direct hit, Carter exclaimed, his voice booming with excitement. They're losing power. Alara felt a surge of adrenaline as the crew rallied, their spirits lifting with every successful strike. The atmosphere aboard the ship shifted from fear to exhilaration, and she reveled in the unity they had forged. Captain, we've got another enemy ship breaking away from the main group, a crew member reported, pointing to the view screen. They're trying to flank us. Not on my watch, Reynolds replied, determination etched on her face. Alara, what do you suggest? Alara's mind raced. If we can engage them in the asteroid field, their maneuverability will be compromised. We can use the rocks to our advantage. Lieutenant Carter, plot a course. Reynolds ordered. Let's take this fight to the asteroids. The crew responded quickly, adjusting their trajectory. The Endeavor shot through the asteroid field, dodging debris and evading the enemy's fire. Alara felt her heart pound in her chest as the ship danced between the massive rocks, its crew working in perfect harmony. "Now," Alara shouted, adrenaline surging as they approached the enemy ship. "Flank them. Engage." The Endeavor maneuvered skillfully, getting behind the enemy ship just as it attempted to regain its composure. A barrage of energy blasts erupted from the ship's cannons, striking the enemy vessel with pinpoint accuracy. "Systems are failing," Carter called out, his eyes wide with excitement. "They're losing control." As the enemy ship began to spiral, Alara could see the fear in its crew. "Captain, we need to offer them a chance to surrender," she suggested, her voice steady. "It's a critical moment. If we want to foster understanding, we must extend an olive branch." Reynolds paused, considering the suggestion. "All right. Carter, send a message. Offer them a chance to yield." With the order given, Carter quickly composed a transmission. "This is Captain Reynolds of the Endeavor. You are outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Surrender now, and we will ensure your safety." A tense moment passed, the crew holding their breath as they awaited a response. The enemy ship continued to spiral, but its weapons fell silent, and the bridge filled with anxious anticipation. Finally, a shaky voice crackled through the comms. We surrender. We've lost control. We won't fight anymore." Cheers erupted in the control room, but Alara felt a sense of solemnity wash over her. The battle was won, but it had come at a cost, one that reminded her of the delicate balance between conflict and cooperation. As the enemy ship powered down, Reynolds turned to Alara, a mix of gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "You were right, Alara. This is just the beginning of understanding. Let's bring them aboard and see where this leads." As they prepared to take on the rescued crew, Alara felt a wave of hope. The Endeavor had not just survived. They had emerged stronger and more unified. Together, they had navigated the chaos of battle and turned it into an opportunity for understanding. The journey ahead promised to be as complex as the stars they sailed among, but Alara felt ready to face it, with her newfound family at her side. With the enemy ship secured, the Endeavor began the process of boarding and assessing the captured crew. Alara stood alongside Captain Reynolds and Lieutenant Carter in the ship's briefing room, tension palpable as they awaited the arrival of the surrendered crew. The air was charged with anticipation, the outcome of this meeting hanging in the balance. "Prepare for anything," Carter muttered, his expression serious. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Reynolds nodded, her eyes focused. "We need to show strength, but also extend an olive branch. Alara, your insights will be crucial here." Alara took a deep breath, her heart racing. This was not just about military strategy. It was about creating an opportunity for understanding, a chance to forge a path forward where none seemed possible. The door slid open, and the captured crew filed in, their expressions wary but defiant. They were a rough-looking bunch, clearly seasoned by conflict, and Alara felt a flicker of empathy for them. These were individuals shaped by their own circumstances, perhaps similar to her own. "Welcome," Reynolds began, her voice steady. "I am Captain Reynolds of the Endeavor. You are safe here, and we mean you no harm." The leader of the enemy crew, a broad-shouldered alien with a jagged scar across his face, stepped forward. "We will not be treated like prisoners," he growled, his voice low and threatening. "You think your mercy means anything to us?" Alara stepped forward, her heart pounding. "What does it mean to you?" she asked, her voice calm and measured. "You fought fiercely. But what brought you to this point? We can help each other, but only if we understand each other." The leader narrowed his eyes, clearly taken aback by her boldness. "What do you know of struggle? You come from a world of privilege." "Privilege can blind us," Alara replied, her voice steady. "But I know the cost of war. I've seen lives lost for reasons that could have been resolved through understanding. We don't have to be enemies." The room fell silent, the tension thick. Reynolds and Carter exchanged glances, hoping Alara's words might pierce through the hardened exterior of the enemy crew. "What do you propose?" the leader finally asked, skepticism lacing his tone. Alara took a deep breath, sensing this was a pivotal moment. "Let's start by sharing our stories. We all have reasons for our actions. If we can find common ground, perhaps we can forge a path forward, one that doesn't involve more bloodshed." The leader hesitated, glancing at his crew. A few exchanged uncertain looks, but the grip of his previous hostility began to soften. "And if we refuse? Then you leave us no choice but to view you as a threat," Reynolds interjected, her tone firm. "But we want to avoid that. This is your opportunity to break the cycle." After a tense moment, the leader nodded slowly, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Very well. We will share our stories." A shared history. As they settled in for what would be an unexpected dialogue, Alara felt a sense of purpose wash over her. The captain and the enemy leader exchanged stories, sharing their worlds and experiences. The alien spoke of a home ravaged by resource scarcity and oppression, where survival often meant conflict. Alara listened intently, feeling the weight of his struggles and the fear that had driven his people to violence. In return, she shared her own story of growth and her people's fight for peace amid oppression, how the Zenthari valued cooperation and understanding over conflict. The room was charged with emotion as they bridged the gap between their cultures, each story a thread in the tapestry of shared humanity. Carter, initially skeptical, began to see the value in the dialogue. "We often forget that our enemies are not just faceless adversaries. They are people with their own stories." The leader's demeanor shifted as the conversation continued. "Perhaps we have been too quick to judge. We thought you were all the same, merciless, and driven by conquest. Yet you offer us a chance to understand." The exchange deepened, and Alara felt a spark of hope ignite within her. This was not just a negotiation. It was a transformation. The enemy crew began to share their fears, their dreams, and the burdens they carried. Alara sensed the power of vulnerability, the way it could shift perspectives and reshape destinies. As the meeting drew to a close, the leader's expression was no longer one of hostility but of contemplation. "Perhaps we can explore this alliance you speak of. But know this, trust will not come easily." Reynolds smiled, her expression warm. "Trust takes time, and we're willing to invest in it. Together, we can find a path forward, one that benefits us all." Alara felt a swell of hope as they moved toward the future, realizing that this moment, this meeting of worlds, could mark the beginning of something profound. The journey ahead would be complex, fraught with challenges, but they were no longer defined by conflict. They were bound by a shared commitment to understanding and cooperation, a bond that could reshape their destinies. Together, they would face the stars, ready to forge a new legacy. In the days following the tense meeting, the atmosphere aboard the Endeavour shifted dramatically. The captured crew, now allies, began to integrate into life on the ship. Alara watched with a sense of satisfaction as both groups engaged in collaborative training exercises, learning from one another. The journey to mutual understanding was only beginning, but the momentum was palpable. Captain Reynolds had set up joint sessions where Zenthari and human crew members worked alongside their former adversaries. Alara took part, facilitating discussions about strategy, ethics, and the nuances of their respective cultures. The walls of distrust that had once separated them began to crumble, replaced by a shared commitment to peace. One afternoon, as Alara and the enemy leader, whom she had come to know as Kel, sat in the briefing room, they discussed tactical approaches for navigating potential conflicts. "Our previous tactics focused solely on aggression," Kel admitted, his tone reflective. "But now, with your insights, I see we must adapt if we hope to survive." Alara nodded, pleased to see the growth in his perspective. "It's about recognizing the value in every voice, Kel. Strength lies not just in our weapons, but in our ability to communicate, to empathize. We are stronger together. Stronger together, he echoed, a small smile breaking through his stern demeanor. A call to action. Their newfound cooperation was put to the test sooner than expected. As the Endeavour patrolled a neighboring sector, they received a distress signal from a nearby colony under attack by a rogue faction. The urgency in the captain's voice cut through the ship as she convened the crew. "We need to respond immediately," Reynolds stated, her gaze sweeping the room. "This isn't just about us. Lives are at stake." Alara felt a surge of adrenaline. "If we combine our resources, we can strategize effectively." "Kale, can your crew provide insights into the rogue faction's tactics?" Kale nodded, determination in his eyes. "We know their methods. They exploit fear, relying on brute force. We must counter with precision and unity." The crew sprang into action, a whirlwind of energy and purpose. Alara stood with Reynolds and Kale at the helm, coordinating their response. For the first time, she felt the full weight of their collaboration, a shared mission binding them together. As they approached the colony, Alara felt her heart race. The scene was chaotic. The rogue faction had set up a blockade, their ships firing indiscriminately at anything that moved. "We have to act fast," Reynolds said, her voice steady. "Carter, plot a tactical approach." With Kale's crew working alongside them, they devised a plan that relied on both deception and strength. They would create a diversion, drawing the rogue ships away from the colony while the Endeavour positioned itself to cut through their defenses. "Deploy the drones again," Carter ordered, his voice charged with excitement. "Let's create the illusion of an attack from multiple fronts." As the plan unfolded, Alara's heart raced with anticipation. The drones launched, zipping toward the enemy with impressive speed, and the rogue ships turned to pursue, leaving the colony vulnerable. "Now," Reynolds commanded, and the Endeavour surged forward, engaging the enemy with coordinated fire. Alara felt a rush of exhilaration as their efforts began to pay off. The rogue ships faltered under the relentless assault. Victory and unity. In the heat of battle, the crew operated like a well-oiled machine. Alara and Kale exchanged quick glances, each understanding the importance of their collaboration. Together, they had transformed what once seemed an impossible challenge into a cohesive effort. "Direct hit," Carter shouted, grinning as their coordinated attack disabled the first rogue ship. The tide was turning. As the dust settled and the last of the enemy ships fled, the crew erupted in cheers. They had successfully defended the colony, but more importantly, they had done so as allies. Once the dust had settled, they sent a message to the colony, assuring them of their safety. The relief in the colonists' voices resonated through the comms, gratitude washing over Alara. In the aftermath, Reynolds gathered everyone in the common area. "Today, we didn't just win a battle. We forged a new alliance. What began as an enemy ship is now part of our mission, our family." Alara felt a swell of pride as she looked around the room, her heart swelling with hope. They had faced conflict and emerged stronger, united by shared experiences and understanding. As the crew celebrated, Alara stepped outside onto the observation deck, gazing at the stars that twinkled in the vastness of space. Kale joined her, a contemplative expression on his face. "You were right," he said softly. "Together, we are stronger. We have the potential to change our destinies." Alara smiled, feeling the warmth of newfound friendship. "This is just the beginning, Kale. We have a long journey ahead of us, but I believe we can make a difference together." As the Endeavour sailed into the depths of space, Alara felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. They were no longer just a human ship and an alien princess. They were a united force, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, fueled by understanding, compassion, and a shared vision of a brighter future.